All right, I believe we are recording. So again, you should have a pretty easy day today. Just make sure you're paying attention to me when I'm talking. I don't see you constantly on your phone during the lesson. Then you have some practice. You have a total of 8 problems. Once you do those, you're done, which in an hour and a half shouldn't take you too long. All right, so what were the 3 equations of lines that we learned? Anybody remember? Like just the names, you give me the actual formulas. What? Logan, give me one. All right, so let's talk slope intercept is the first one that we started with. That is by far, again, and I'm talking more about moving it in next year. This year is your building year for next year. Next year is the year you have got to apply yourself and pass that test. These are all students in my geometry class that have not passed that test. I would say many, if not even most of them, are juniors. They're not graduating yet. If you do not pass this test or an equivalent test, there are other ones you can get a passing score on, you won't graduate. They may walk across the stage, so you may see them, oh wait, Mr. Gill said they weren't going to graduate. They may walk across the stage, but they don't get a diploma until they pass this test. A fake diploma, just kind of let their parents take pictures and stuff. So it's not a joke. I mean, these kids, like I said, may not graduate. They don't pass that test. And some of them are actually, I looked at some of the names and they're actually doing pretty well in math. So I'm glad they haven't graduated yet. We'll leave those. We'll get those later. So this is your building year. Don't slack off this year because it's going to make next year twice as tough. Next year goes twice as fast. So we have slowed down. They go literally twice as fast as we go. That's their pacing guidance. So what we cover this year, you'll actually see again next year. We're doing the exact same thing they do. It's just that our full year is their first semester. So they cover what we cover in only one semester, but you will have already seen it. The issue is going to be your second semester when you've never seen it before, and they're going twice as fast as you're used to. So just remember, this is your building year, so take advantage of it. So that is by far, I would say, the one you're going to see most next year. You won't see these other two. Well, standard form is pretty common too. But Danielle, you wanted to give me another one? So standard form. So I guess I should write. So that is called slope intercept. All right, step on those. And it's again, the name just comes from the fact that it's got in there the slope, and it's got in there the y-intercept. That's where the name comes from. Slope intercept. So if you know what the equation is, you really should be able to figure out the name of it. So the other one was standard form. I'm going to actually write that a little bit lower. Now, standard form, did I say the word slope? There's no word slope in when I say standard form because there's no slope in there. Nothing in there is the slope. There's no M, right? There's no letter M. So that does not have a slope in it. A lot of kids want to say that the number that's in front of the X is the slope because they're used to the number in front of the X being the slope. There is no slope in that. The only way you have slope is if it's this format where Y is all by itself, or the third one, which is what? Point slope, because you got the slope in it, right? So point slope is this one. So again, the name comes from what's in there. We have the slope, so M is in there again, and we have a point, which is the X1, Y1. So again, if you can remember the name, you should probably be able to create it. Because I know I need a point in there somewhere. I need the slope in there somewhere. If you can create it, you can probably figure out the name. Standard form would be the only one that there's no real, you just have to kind of know that standard form. But the other two where they say slope in it, the slope's got to be in there. You just got to realize if it's slope intercept, then it's got to have the y-intercept. If it's point slope, you got to have that one where you have the x1, y1. All right, so those are not given to you on any kind of sheet for the EOC next year. Any questions on any of that? Oh, and that's standard form at the bottom. Standard form. So what we're doing today is it's only a piece of a lesson. I hope it doesn't take very long. We're focusing on slope, but we're focusing on parallel and perpendicular. First question is, what's parallel? What does that mean? So two lines that never touch. They basically run right next to each other, never touch. That's what parallel means. You don't remember that. Now, the way that comes into play in this lesson, oh, that's our problems. Let me find a graph real quick. Of course, it's probably, oh, there we go. That'll work. So if I have two lines, not going to be perfectly straight. That's fine. Those two lines will go on forever and never touch. What is I'll ask you a more difficult version of this and I'll give you one. What is the thing they have in common that is the reason why they never touch? Well, they are straight lines, but again, you can have two straight lines that cross. So it's not that they're straight. You could have two lines that look like that they don't cross on the graph, but eventually those two lines will cross. They will cross on the graph, but eventually they will cross. What is it about these two that keeps them just running at the same angle, I'll say? It's same direction, same angle, but there's a specific math word. I'll give you this. And as I've used that word over and over and over again. They have the same, wouldn't be the same points because these points are down here, right? And these points are up there. They don't have the same points. So, and again, the line is all the solutions, so they don't have the same solutions. The answers to whatever equation this would be different than the answers there, but something about them is the same. Same slope. You need to write this down. If two lines are parallel, they have the same slope, or you could write if two lines have the same slope, they are parallel. That is something you've absolutely got to know. This year, next year. Geometry, we use that again in geometry, so let's see it again. I'm guessing it's going to be in every math class you ever take, so open the big one. Parallel slope. Oh, yeah, I did people lunch. Oh. Only two people. So, if you somehow can solve for the slope and find out that, hey, these two equations have the same slope, or these two lines have the same slope, that's how you prove they are parallel. It's because they have the same slope. Now, here's what we're adding to that today that's the slightly more difficult. Oh, I'll go ahead and mention this right now. It'll come up later. This slope here, -1 over -2, is really +1. Just remember, a negative divided by a negative is positive. That's going to come into play today. You need to understand that we would never write a slope with a negative and a negative in it. We would write it like that. So you're going to get some slopes that are negative divided by negative. You want to change it to positive before you do the next step that I'm about. Now, I didn't put this on the bell work, but let's see, and not many people, anybody do it. What does perpendicular mean? Parallel means they never touch. It's perpendicular. They will touch, but there's a specific way. These lines are not perpendicular. They will eventually touch. They're not perpendicular. Perpendicular is a specific way that they look, or I don't want to give it away. I'll give you a minute.
Just like they touch like this.
So what would that be? What is that? What do they form when they cross? That's the key. Perpendicular lines definitely touch, but they form a specific, I'll just say they form a specific type of angle. What kind of angle is that? Now? So what Justin just said is, I'll tell you right now, all of these grid lines are perpendicular. The way they cross, the direction that they're going when they cross that forms a specific type of angle, makes them perpendicular, this type of angle. It's like 90 degrees. It's a right angle. So again, right angle, write these little notes down. Right angle is a 90-degree angle. It looks like everything you look around this room and see practically. These lines here on the board, this vertical line and that horizontal line, are a right angle. The lines on the bricks, straight up and down, and then flat across, that is a 90-degree angle. Edges of your paper, vertical line, horizontal line, 90-degree angle. So all that's what a 90-degree angle is. So in order for two lines to be perpendicular, they have to meet at a 90-degree angle. Now, they won't always be straight up and down and straight left and right. Because what I could do, although that's not even a very good one. Here, shoot, I can't do that. All right, hold on. I'm going to draw it in to make it, especially since I'm recording, I want you to see this. So if I drew in lines like this, that's not perfect. So those lines are at a 90-degree angle for the most part. Hopefully I can do that. I knew I was going to do that. Here, I'll do it this way. All right. If I turn this, one's not flat now and straight up and down, but they're still 90 degrees. I didn't change anything about the angles that they were at. I just turned the whole figure. So remember, that's still 90 degrees. Doesn't have to be that one is straight up and down and one is left and right. It has to do with this angle that they form where they connect, and that is still, if we measured that with a protractor, that is still 90 degrees. So that's the definition of perpendicular. So here's the last piece, and then we're going to just practice some problems. Actually, even practice some from these problems down here. The slope of a perpendicular line. I didn't do this with the other class, or I didn't think about it actually, so I'm going to do it with them next class, but I'm going to go ahead and give you this. If you have the slope of a line and you want to create the perpendicular slope, you want to make a line perpendicular because you want to create a 90-degree angle, there's two steps. So write this: to create a perpendicular, which I'll spell it for you. Uh-oh, that wasn't very good. Yeah, let me clean it up so it's easier to see. There. So to create a perpendicular slope, can't read it, it's P-E-R. The first three letters. So first, wait till I write this and then you use your own words. I'll give you some options. So don't write this just yet. Yeah. All right, so what's that mean? And again, if you want to change around the wording a little bit, it means I would take, so if I'm going to change this 1/2, and I want to make it a perpendicular slope, I make it 2/1. That's what I mean by flip it upside down. Take the bottom number, put it on top. So if you may want to write all this out, you take the bottom number, move it to the top number, move it to the bottom. Then the second step, and this is why it was important that I showed you that up top, you flip the sign, the positive or negative. So if it's a positive, you flip it to negative for the perpendicular. If it's a negative, you flip it to positive for the perpendicular. You should always have one positive and one negative number for your parallel and perpendicular. They can't both have the same sign. And I'm going to give you one thing that you can add to the bottom of that in a second. So I'm just going to finish this one. So if this was my original slope, I turned it upside down and now I changed that to negative. That's how you do the perpendicular slope. Now there's a few tricky ones, so we'll just cover those real quick right now because you're going to see them on the, well, that must be part of the, oh, there's dots in. Again, if I get this, here's what a lot of kids did yesterday. -3 over -2 is what I get when I solve for the slope, because you're going to have to solve for the slope first in the problems. They were saying, oh, well, I want to flip it upside down, and then I want to flip both of those signs to positive. That's what, which makes sense. I get why they were thinking that. Problem is, remember, this is already a positive number. It's a negative divided by negative. That is positive. So you did not actually flip the sign of the number. You have two positive numbers. This is actually positive, negative divided by negative, and that's definitely positive, positive divided by positive. So you have to understand that this is actually a positive number. So I would change it first to be positive. And again, I wouldn't mark off on this as long as you get the correct second number, but I would change it to be positive 3/2. And then I would say, well, then this has to be negative. Oh, when you write a negative fraction, you really don't put the negative with the top or the bottom number. We did that when we graphed because we needed to know which number, the rise or the run, was negative. But when you're just writing a number and you're not graphing it, the negative goes out in front of the fraction. See what else came up yesterday. Oh, and here's the last thing that I didn't tell them that I'll tell you guys. So your last step is to check. You can write more. I'm just going to write check. To make sure they are perpendicular, because there's a way you can check, especially now that you can use calculators. It'll be super easy. If you must, so let's pass. I want you to go ahead and do this. I hope I have enough of these, man. I'm already losing calculators. I'm down to like 16 geometry calculators. I don't know where those are. That's 20 seconds. I usually double. Yes, geometry didn't even have enough calculators yesterday. That's some of those. Yeah, don't use the blue ones. The blue ones work very differently than the white ones. Up in that, I think you know with the drawer up there, right? I think right before. So that top drawer that's actually a little bit open right there has pencils in it. Hopefully have enough of these. I think I have some more somewhere. There was a comedy show that used to have a little character made out of clay called Mr. Bill. It was funny back then. I don't know if it's still funny. Oh, so perfect. Oh boy, it's gonna be close. It's gonna be close. So if you see one laying around, that's how it's good. I always need all of them. All right, so here's what I want you to do. Well, actually, let's do the one that is correct first. And it's practice putting fractions in and doing math still. Put in 3/2 in your calculator. How do we do that? How do we put in 3/2 in a calculator? Fractions. 3 ABC, then 2. So hit the number 3, hit the ABC button, and the number 2. There's your fraction 3/2. then say times or multiplying, and then put in the fraction -2/3. Again, you have to put the numbers in first before you flip it to negative. So you would say times 2 ABC 3, flip that to negative, and then hit equals. If you have two perpendicular numbers, two perpendicular slopes, and you multiply them, they will always give you negatives. So that's like your check at the end to make sure you did it correctly. Multiply them together. I'll write check by multiplying. But you need to write that you get -1. So write that down. If you multiply them together, they better give you -1 or you did something wrong. Either you input in the calculator wrong when you multiplied the fractions, or you did something wrong when you created the perpendicular. So just to show you that this doesn't work, multiply that times that. Try to do the -3/2, which is, you can't. You'd have to do that by putting 3 and then hitting the negative, and then the fraction button, then 2 and hitting the negative. So you actually use the negative twice in that. I don't even know how you would put that into a calculator. So that could be your first sign that you did something wrong. You're not change something. And you should get +1, not negative. If you're multiply. Actually, I'm sorry. No, you wouldn't even get that. Wait, negative. You should get positive. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to practice on these. So the first step, though, is when you have 2 points. If they already give you the slope, it's easy. You just flip the slope. But if they give you something like this, which I think is more likely to happen if this is something you see on a quiz, on a test, well, and on my quiz for sure, but I'm more talking about the district stuff. Is anybody copying any of that stuff? You need to solve for the slope first. Super slow. Oh, now it's messy. There we go. So here's the formula we've been using for slope. Again, this is not one that you get for a quiz, so you need to remember it. Y2 subtract Y1, it's actually right next to Kristen. It's a really, really tiny version of it right here. So it's up in a couple spots. I had up one place a little. Yeah, that was a little bit. So when you do that, oh, I didn't. Actually, here, I think I need to go there. All right, so when you do these problems, use that formula. Am I zooming? Oh, I am already zooming. Huh. So remember, your first step when you have those 2 points and you want to figure the slope out, you label them. X1, Y1. I'm using a 1 there because I'm considering that to be my first point. The ones have they don't have any math significance. Like I'm not going to be multiplying times 1 or doing any math with that 1. I'm just saying that's my first point. So I need an X1, Y1. That's my second point. So I need X2, Y2. That's all those little subscript numbers mean. Now I just plug them in the formula to get the slope. I would always write the formula every time I did one of these problems for 2 reasons. One, it helps you from making mistakes, but it also helps you memorize it if you write it down every single time before you do it. So Y2 is what? 22, right? I am recording something different than that. So 22. You have to write the subtraction sign. And if the next number is negative, you have to, oh, excuse me.
It wasn't yesterday,
okay.
and I'm like,
I don't remember which period he's
this
in.
is
I think he was
Monday,
yesterday.
right?
You're right. I do remember marking the maps in there. All right. So 22. I mean, he did miss this yesterday, so that didn't hurt him too much. But
Gonna have to just check. We're gonna have to come for the 3 quizzes that we missed, even if it's a bomb
Right.
to have it done.
yeah, I got you.
Okay.
So in this case, Y1 is positive, so I just write 6. She is the yesterday person. I don't know where she is. Where she is.
I think she has to.
She's so red for no reason. So 22 subtract 6. Now I do my x2, x1. Well, x2 is -2. Subtract, that's part of the formula. Now for x1, I have to write that negative sign with the number. Still have quite a few people not writing a negative sign because I guess you're thinking that the subtraction sign replaces it. Does not replace it. So go ahead and do that in your calculator. Practice doing the negative, subtracting a negative, putting negatives in. Just do it. I've already set it up. Just do it. On the computer or your sheet. Anyone? I remember that oh, yeah. Because I walked you through it. Remember I created it. I didn't remember. Yep. I got a lot going on. A lot going on. It is big. Just doing that in the calculator. What is the answer now? So, yeah. It's 5 words. Oh, there was no such thing as ADHD when I was a kid, so nobody got tested for it. Didn't exist. It was not a diagnosis. We just thought they were misbehaved kids. So 22 subtract 6 is what? And then -2 subtract -4 becomes -2 plus 4, so +2. So that is your slope. I have no idea. Yeah, sometimes I write them a lot of different ways. Sometimes I write it like that, although that's rare. Most of the time I'll write it like that. Sometimes I'll just do like that, where it almost looks like a Z if I'm in a real hurry. So there's no rhyme or reason to my choose. I just felt very fancy on that.
What was you?
So here's what you also need to know about this. This is not the slope you will ever see in a math multiple choice answer. You need to know how to change that to the correct slope. So I'm going to show you what to do. If you take your take your calculator, and again, I told you these will save your butt when you wind up having to take those tests. They do a lot of this stuff for you. Put in, like it's a fraction, 16 ABC 2. And then hit equals. Simplifies it for you. Just to show you that it works on numbers that actually stay a fraction, they just become a simplified version. Do this one. Put in 36 over 24 is ABC. It's going to give you a different number, but I'll show you what you can do. Like it'll give you a mixed fraction. So it simplifies it down, and it gives. So that's what you're seeing on your screen. That's the equivalent of 1 1/2. But let's say all the answers are in this format, where it's just one number over another number. And you're like, I don't know which one. I mean, you should be able to figure it out, but I don't know what that is. Like if that's what number that would be with just a number over number. So now do this. You should still have this on your screen, the 1 backwards L, 1 backwards L2. If not, just put it in. Just type 1 ABC, 1 ABC 2. So you have that on the screen. Show you another function. I think I showed you before, but we didn't really use. So with that on your screen, hit the shift button in the upper left and hit that ABC button again. You're basically now using the function that's the words, the letters of the buttons. I know, but it's so now it flips that for you to 3 over 2. I'll write it down here. So you can go back, and then last but not least, I don't know if I showed you this. Now that you have that on your screen, well, actually, you would have this on your screen. Should have that, and this would have worked when you had this too. Now, without hitting shift, just hit the ABC button. Change it to a decimal. So you can flip every number between a mixed number that needs, an improper fraction that needs to be simplified, a mixed number that you want to change to an improper fraction, a fraction you want to change to a decimal, and it takes care of the positive and negative rules for you in the process of doing all of them. So there is no reason why you should have any issues with fractions, positive, negative stuff. The only time positive, negative might be an issue if there's a variable involved, then you kind of got to know whether or not it's perfect. You can't put a variable into a calculator to X or Y or something like that. But that should be a huge help if you practice. If for no other reason when you're practicing this stuff, even if you're not getting concepts, this will come in handy, the fact that you learn how to use this calculator. Because even if you don't get this when you take it next year, they all work pretty similar. I don't think they'll give you the blue ones, but even the ABC button on the blue one works the same. It's just the positive, negative is different on this. All right, so now we have our slope. It's 8. I'm getting rid of all of that. Is anybody still writing? Right. So we now have our slope of 8. Well, that's the slope, right? I'm going to write m because that's the variable we use for slope. We want to change that to perpendicular slope, though. How would we do that? I said flip the fraction, but we just have 8. So remember, any number can be changed to a fraction by putting it over 1. Or if we would have just simplified 16 over 2, it would have been 8 over 1 because you divide both numbers by 2. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So it would have been that if you did it kind of in your head, if you simplified the way you're supposed to simplify. Now I want you to change that to the perpendicular. Now that we've made the fraction, show me how to change that to perpendicular. A perpendicular slope. You should have written the steps down. I don't have them up on the screen anymore, but. I think you did. I didn't hear it, but I tried to piece together what I thought I heard. So change that. Remember, there's 2 rules, and then check it and make sure you come up with the right answer when you multiply. You just know. Well, maybe you did something wrong. So just check. You're doing all of it. Yeah, this is number 4. Correct.
I would have asked it too.
With my pointy head. If you measure me on the pointy head. Also, I'm doing this.
Stand up. I'm short.
Average.
No, I'm short.
Look up average height.
What's my grade? She's so much interesting.
What?
Like, I thought of that, and then they changed. And I thought of that again, and then they changed again.
Yes, it's just to make sure that you guys are on top of checking it. And I am wanting to make sure I'm on top of this. So, what?
Stop marking me late. I was 10 and 20.
Oh, yeah, you're late.
No.
Then you should stop.
Yeah. Well, it's
Like, actually, I should have marked you absent the other day. Like, you missed half a class.
that was because my bus. Yeah, they didn't give anybody a
You have to get a pass from them, or else you're not excused.
Well, they didn't give me one. They just took me some.
All right. So, what was it? What was the answer? They have to give you one. If they don't, you need to say, "Hey, I need a pass." Unless they sometimes they will send an email out, but they should tell you that. Say, "Hey, we're just going to email everybody." You've got to always get a pass. I'm telling you right now, Miss Pinsker, if you get her for geometry, she doesn't accept passes from teachers. So if you hang out in the teacher's room and you're doing this or that, and the teacher writes you a pass, she still marks you charged. There's no reason to get into her class late, she says. Teacher should not be holding you from her class, which I get. Like, I can't stand when teachers hold students and they show up late and they miss the bell work or they miss the beginning of the lesson. Like, I can't catch them up. I got 20 something people. I can't catch one person up because a teacher held them late. Especially without like running it by me and saying, hey, is there any way they can stay? That's drives me crazy. So if we multiplied that together, oh, you should have had negative. Remember, we put the negative in front of the fraction, so get in that habit unless you're graphing, which we're not graphing. So that is the original slope. Actually, 8's really the original slope. That's the perpendicular slope. If you multiplied 8 times negative 1/8, you would get -1. That's your final step to check. Go ahead and try to do number 5. I want you to do one on your own, then I'll show you the problems you're doing, and then once you're done, you're done. I might not even make
What number did we do? 4?
4, yeah, so 5.
I was copying. You don't hair. Thank you.
Why were you not done with it is my
Because
question.
it just broke it.
You should have already done all of that. I told you to do all of that. You were supposed to check it also. I said check it.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, all right. Such a bad liar.
There's some assignment made on like the paper in the office. No, I came late. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, wait for the bus?
Yeah.
All right, then they took care of. They should put it in the. Well, they never put it in the system.
Yeah, you came late.
Wait, are you talking about yesterday or today?
No, the day that I missed it happened last.
Yeah, you didn't. There was nothing. Now, if you signed it, they will maybe go back in after the fact and say, okay, here's our list of late people. We're not gonna mark them tardy. What I mark in the book isn't all because think about it. I mark people absent when they're in testing all the time, but they're not absent. They're testing. So the office goes back and takes care of all that stuff. So just because I'm marking, well, I mean, I don't know why when people are testing and stuff. If I didn't have.
It's still late.
Well, it may take a while. Like it may take a week. It doesn't happen. Trust me, nothing happens immediately. All right, so work on number 5. First step is you got to figure the slope out. If you don't remember the formula, if you can't really see it. There's this. So that's how you figure the original slope of those 2 points. Then once you figure that slope out, it needs to be in a fraction form so that you can flip it upside down and then change the sign from whatever the original slope is, change it to the opposite sign. And then lastly, multiply those 2 things together, just make sure you get negative. So the slope, or when you multiply. -12/3. So what do you need to do though with that? But we're going to need a fraction, right? Because we got to flip it upside down. So what did you have to change -4 to? What did we do when we had the 8? There you go. So now when you do that though, don't keep the negative on the 4. Just put it out in front of the fraction like that. And then you flip the numbers upside down and then you flip the sign. So what would your perpendicular slope be? -4. Like again, that's really just -4 is the number, but if 4/1 is a negative number, what do you have to do? Get a perpendicular slope. Well, when we get the perpendicular slope, that's when we'll multiply them. But no, there were those 2 steps. You should have written them down. I said, write these down. In order to make a fraction. So what would you do? So you need to flip the fraction. So you have 4/1. So what do you do? 1/4, and then what's the second fraction? Well, you flip the negative to a positive. So you should get positive 1/4. And then if you multiply -4/1 times positive 1/4, you should get -1. So really quickly, I'm just going to kind of show you the answer because I'll just walk around if you're not getting it. So that's your first step. Label them. Dude, you can't keep telling them.
It's not gonna pass though.
Yeah, but I had teaching when I'm teaching. I don't mind you doing either that or you got to get here in the morning before I start teaching. Right? So I'll give you one today, but in the future, if you're going to come by before I start teaching. It's been like every day. All I have. Order. If you can't get here before class, then come in between. All right. So that's the first step. When you plug them in, you should have had negative 15, subtract negative 3. Make sure you have a subtraction and a negative sign up top. 4 subtract 1. You do the math on that, you would get negative 12 divided by 3. So like you might have just heard, that gives you negative 4 for your slope. That's your original slope. Now, though, I need to change that into a fraction because I'm going to have to flip it upside down. So I'm going to kind of come all the way over to here. So that would be negative 4 over 1. So to flip that, it becomes 1 over 4. Well, the sign, it was a negative number. So that means that now becomes a positive number. So this is your original slope. This is your perpendicular slope. If you multiply those together, which you can do on your own, you should get negative 1, and you will if you multiply them in the calculator. All right, so here's what I want you to do. Any questions? All right, go ahead. I feel like, again, oh wait, hold on. Huh. Yeah, I don't think it's bad, but we'll see. Hi. Oh, here we go. So here are your problems. I'm going to only have you do, I'm going to take it even easier on you. I feel like you guys were pretty attentive. So when you do that, I don't mind cutting the workload down. Do 1 through 4. They had to do 1 through 8 yesterday. You do 1 through 4. I might still make you do one in front of me. I feel like you're just sitting there not working.